anyone who really has an awakening to discover their abilities, that there's usually some form of trauma that happens that sort of breaks the heart open and allows us to be more present, to pick up on that energy, and that vibe. And so for me, it was a little bit earlier. I had a very traumatic childhood. My parents both suffered from drug addiction, so I was kind of tossed around as a child. And she got sick. Within a week, she died of pancreatic cancer that we now know is caused by her addictions. I was able to fly out and see her on her deathbed after almost 6 years, before my 15th birthday. And I was her only child. It was a very traumatic experience for me. But 2 nights later, I woke up actually to her in the room talking to me. And it was extremely comforting, but it was extremely confusing to me as well, not understanding enough about that realm and having had a Christian background. There's a lot of emotions going on there. So that was my aha moment, my awakening moment. And for 3 years, I kept having these experiences happen that really led me to further understand the other side and understand what I was experiencing. And 3 years later, I found myself in a metaphysical shop where they were teaching a class on mediumship and psychic development. And when I was there, I was sat with a random woman, and I was able to connect her with a dear friend that had passed away from a suicide of a prescription drug overdose. And, it really wasn't what I had experienced seeing on television or in the media, like The Sixth Sense or anything like that. It was a much more subtle experience for me. Like, it was in my mind, it was in my body, and I had to trust these hunches that were coming through to me. And then a minute later, I saw a table with prescription pills overflowing off the table. And at that point, a teacher had walked by and she heard me, and she said, "How would you interpret what you're seeing?" And I said, "Overdose." It just came to me. And the woman broke down crying and had explained that her best friend, who was that Janine and blonde, had committed suicide of a prescription drug overdose. So for me, that was my first experience having that validation in that moment. I was 18. And so I was nervous, I was excited. There was a gamut of emotions happening within me. As a child, when a parent tells you that, your subconscious mind accepts that command. And so for me, it totally closed me off in that sense until years later when she actually herself crossed over. When I was a child, 4, 5, 6, I was terrified to go to sleep by myself because at night I would see faces floating around me and the mouths moving, but I didn't hear anything. I just saw all these things. And so my mom told me, it's your imagination. You watched too many scary movies. She was not at all a believer in that until she actually crossed over herself. So I told some friends and they told some friends. And so I kept practicing with random people that I didn't have a connection to. I was getting calls afterwards, explaining oh my gosh, I didn't know what this meant now, but this is extremely significant to my family. So for me, it was foreign, just kind of allowing myself to have the experience and understanding that it was more a part of me than I realized, as a child having the same or having similar experiences as well. It was something that was sort of ingrained in me, but I didn't quite understand it at that time. For me, it was really just kind of getting out of my fear with it, out of my doubt with it, and just trusting that connection.